Right. So I hate taxes, and I think brother Josh hates taxes. I think brother Luca isn't particularly keen on them either.
Just don't like them.
Right.
No.
So it looks like Labour is going for an economic policy that is disastrous, and this is the combination of open borders and massive increase in welfarism.
And this is, of course, to fill that 50 billion black hole that we've found out now exists within the budget. And of course, when they came in, they were complaining about the Conservatives having a 22 billion black hole. And I, for one, am hoping for, not a metaphorical black hole to appear in Whitehall, but a real one. And we can be rid of all of this. But alas, I'm afraid Team Black Hole is a very small club of people.
You have anticipated my point about black holes, Josh. Right, so
where's that going?
It seems that this is the policy that Labour is opting for. They have their people. They have, who is this man with a Stevenson with a weird accent, and everyone is falling for him because
Gary Stevenson.
Yeah, Gary Stevenson.
Gary Economics.
Yeah, tax the rich. Yeah, where have we heard this before? This is such a new concept. Who came up with it?
Well, the rich are more able to move than ever, and also that's already what's happening. And in fact, haven't we lost something like over 1,000 multimillionaires over the past few years? I remember seeing something like that. I'm just remembering it very vaguely in my mind.
Brother Josh, you're anticipating my segment again. You don't have to treat everything as a black hole. Right?
I'll let you get on with it.
Right. So I think the combination of welfarism and open borders is disastrous because you have a population that is rising and more people require benefits. That means that everyday people who are working are taxed into oblivion, and the taxes are rising. And if you see the main leftist narrative when it comes to poverty and crime and all adverse effects that we are encountering on a daily basis, it's always somehow leading into you need to be more taxed. It's always leading into...
It's always the answer.
Exactly. And that is because the left has gone for the globally rich versus globally poor distinction, according to which almost everyone in the West, definitely the working class of England, sort of counts like globally rich.
So it's basically a way of punishing people who are economically productive in favour of people who are essentially financial net negatives.
Yeah. Right. So in these conditions, business confidence is decreasing. So we have an article here from The Telegraph by Tim Wallace. It's a deputy economics editor. Says business confidence worse than during COVID. Reeves has hit firms with cost increases while failing to improve economy, say bosses. Right. I mean, it's not particularly surprising to us. Mm-hmm. Maybe it could be surprising if you're a leftist, but it's not surprising.
But there's also the fact that at this time the global economy is not doing particularly well, and so it's all the more important that you get things right at home to be able to weather the storm. And instead what we've got is a perfect storm of incompetence, because not only did the pandemic disrupt trade, and I know things are sort of getting back to normal, but economic growth hasn't necessarily returned to the same sorts of levels. In many ways I think we're getting degrowth, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so it's the worst time she could be possibly doing it for the country.
Right, so we have here an article that talks about key events. This is by the same author. And we are essentially going to show you stuff and data from this article and talk about them a bit, because it's very dense in information. I'm not going to show you many links. We're just going to talk about this. And I'm going to say, so he says staff numbers declined by 164,000 in July compared to the same month last year, according to the Office for National Statistics, taking the total to 3.3 million. So last July, it was 164,000 more jobs.
And this has got to be a consequence of making the cost of having an employee more per head for businesses by increasing the business rates of tax previously. Yeah. And that we're only just seeing the knock-on effects of that, and now it's going to be made even worse, probably.
Yes, and they're saying basically that this has turned businesses to hire contractors, to prefer contractors as opposed to full-time employees.
Hey, that's what I'm doing now.
Right, so it says it comes as company grapple with rising staff costs caused by the Chancellor's decision to raise the national minimum wage and employer national insurance contributions in April. So it seems to me that we have the same age-old issue here. We have leftists who don't know economics 101, or they know it but they completely choose to pay attention to it, because in their minds, it's not the morally correct thing to do.
Yes. If you want a vision of the future, Winston, imagine a chancellor who looks like she should have been a dinner lady, hiking your taxes up forever.
It says there, however, average wage growth slowed down from 5% to 4.6%. And we will see that wage growth is higher in the public sector, not in the private sector, which means the UK is opting for statism, and statism means that the state is a black hole, sucking all economic creativity, stifling all, economic freedom, and making things worse.
Before this, I think as a percentage of our country's GDP, about 46% of it went through the state. And this was prior to all of this. So we're probably, 50% now, if not more. And that's more or less a measure of how far are you to full communism. Well, we're halfway there. We're not living on a prayer, though.
And let's be very honest. It's not just Labour who was bad at economics.
No, not
It says there the number of job vacancies fell for the 37th month in a row to 718,000 between May and July, down by 44,000 on the previous 3 months. So they're just declining in number for a long time now. It's more than 3 years. That's economic mismanagement.
Been declining at a pretty steady rate, despite technical innovation that's helped somewhat since the time of Thatcher, when she was closing all of the industry and mines and the likes.
Yeah. And also we have the rate of unemployment holding firm at 4.7% between April and June. So that's not exactly a good job. Right, so we have here jobs in retail and hospitality hit hard. Office of National Statistic Direction of Economic Statistics, Liz McKeon, said, taken together, these latest figures point to a continued cooling of the labour market. The number of employees on payroll has now fallen in 10 of the last 12 months, with these falls concentrated in hospitality and retail.
Which are disproportionately low-income jobs as well. What I would refer to as entry-level positions.
Exactly.
And now you can't even enter them because they're all getting taken up by new arrivals.
Yeah, so while the job market's contracting, the population's exploding. That's, I'm sure, a recipe for a healthy economy.
Which means that the wholesaling, retailing, hotels and restaurant sector showed the strongest regular annual growth rate in the wake of Rachel Reeves' decision to raise the national minimum wage in April.
I'm not surprised about the hotels, to be honest. I think
they're booming out.
In 1,000 years' time, the only thing that's going to be left are some towering golden hotels that have just taken in every migrant and built up an empire. Some of the richest people in the country now are the hotel owners that have been running this migrant scam. It's unbelievable.
Well, if the population is increasing, you need more food for them to eat, right? So no wonder
channel migrants.
No wonder the wholesaling, retailing, and the hotels and restaurant sector is going to boom. Also,
point, yeah.
if you have a government that has open borders and also opts for welfarism and says that lots of people who come here illegally need to be placed in hotels, and they're paying hotels also with taxpayer money, obviously hotels are going to show regular annual growth.
But of course that's going to be disproportionately weighted towards the ones that have contracts with the state, because there are many hotels and hotel chains that aren't going to do that, and because of the state of the economy, I imagine internal tourism's down, and so actually it's going to be very much weighted to the hotels that have sold our country down the river and betrayed us, and that's kind of unfortunate.
Who are the men that pig for scraps amongst the ruins at the end of history? You should know, because you encounter them every day. Between the towering buildings of a fallen empire, we find the Fellahin, the historyless men, who know nothing of the turning of the cosmic wheel and find themselves outside of civilization itself. Cut loose from the great chain of being, they represent the loam into which our dying culture will return. That is, unless we choose to take up the burden once again. This Fellahin condition is the subject we explore in issue 4 of Islander magazine, on sale while stocks last and available worldwide at shop.lotuseaters.com.
Right. Also, we see here that the public sector seems to show a high growth of salary. It says public sector pay grew by 5.7%, while private sector pay slipped from 4.9% to 4.8%, which I think is worrying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It shows a steady economic centralization tendency, which I consider to be particularly detrimental.
I think it's also bad that they're getting such a significant pay cut at the expense of the private sector that has to prop it up. And, you know, I would like everyone to earn good money, so it's not necessarily jealousy. I mean, that's public sector also includes things like firefighters and ambulance staff. So, you know, obviously I'm going to be grateful towards them, but also it includes civil servants, to which I go, ugh.
And policemen.
But there is
some policemen are okay.
There's also the other issue, Josh, and I'm sure you will agree with this, is that when it comes to the public sector, lots of prices aren't determined spontaneously,
Mm-hmm.
as they would be in a relatively free market. They very likely they reflect the choice of bureaucrats to try and gather political support.
Well, there's no profits or losses to determine
could be
values,
that.
therefore it's
It
harder
could be
to
that.
allocate resources. That's the whole reason that the Soviet Union collapsed. You know, it's
Yeah.
just in a much smaller, well, not so much smaller, but smaller scale.
Right.
Only
okay.
half a Soviet Union.
Yes.
But also here we're talking about the per capita issue of how pay is distributed according to the population. It says total pay, which measures average wages, including bonuses, fell from 5% to 4.6% during the period. So less money per person. Right, let's move onwards. Ministers target people not seeking work. This here is just complete gaslighting. Honestly, this is very frustrating. The government needs to bring more people out of economic inactivity and into work, a labor education minister has said. Now, pause for a minute, and let's, for instance, talk about welfarism. One of the negative aspects of welfarism is that you are creating a culture of dependency. The more you opt for this, the greater you go for social benefit, the more you go for increased social benefits, the more some people are going to say, well, what's the purpose in working? I'm just going to sit and I'm going to receive benefits. Because if I start working, I'm going to lose the benefits.
In psychology, it's referred to as learned helplessness, in that what you actually do by making someone dependent on you is you remove their ability to act in a way in which they can be self-sufficient. And this is why some African countries have actually said, no, we don't want foreign aid because we need to build up our own industries. Some of the more savvy ones, in fact, are like, actually, no, our dependence on foreign aid is actually hobbling us and we need to be self-sufficient because in the long run we'll be much better off. And I think that's true of people as well. I think that to a certain extent you have to be somewhat cruel to be kind and allow people to suffer the consequences of their own actions. Obviously not, to a ridiculous degree, but just enough that it motivates them to better themselves.
Exactly, but this rhetoric that the labor education minister is using isn't the traditional rhetoric of proponents of a massive welfare state. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But they are opting for this in combination with open borders.
And there are, 20% of welfare recipients are foreign nationals.
Indeed. Not surprised.
Jobs slowdown may be abating. Payrolls dropped to the lowest level in nearly 2 years, but the pace of decline was the lowest since January. Let's move forward. That's about the... Right, firms switch to contractors after Reeves' tax raid. Business owners are increasingly hiring contractors and virtual staff as they grapple with Rachel Reeves' tax raid. And we have here a chief executive at Mo Living saying, since April's employers' national insurance hike, I've resisted taking on full-time staff. My property management business now runs entirely with 12 contractors and virtual assistants, both UK-based and overseas. The NI increase raised employment costs enough to tip the balance. Full-time hires mean fixed overheads, while contractors offer flexibility, scalability, and access to specialist skills without the commitment of salaries, holiday pay, or sick leave. This is precisely what the criticism of leftist economics is about. Stop thinking that your plans can backfire. They constantly talk about the precariousness of the working class, and in their economic illiteracy, they're making people's lives, and especially the lives of members of the working class, more precarious. Because, of course,
if you are a contractor, you don't have the guarantee of income you have if you're a full-time employee. And so it's riskier. You know, I'm a contractor. However, I don't have any dependents that I have to look after. And were I in that position, I would perhaps want something a bit more secure, because you want to be able to feed your own children, right? And moving to a contractor economy isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, but it doesn't suit everyone, and particularly if you're in that camp of having a family and wanting the security of regular income, you can't take the hit or the risks like I can, perhaps, then it's going to be awful for you. And also you're going to need some of those benefits, things like, you know, national insurance and pension payments, all of that sort of stuff that you don't get when you're a contractor.
You're absolutely right. And I will say this, the way I saw it in universities have stopped hiring. More or less, they have stopped hiring regular staff, full-time staff, and they are opting for contractors. And there comes a time where they're saying, right, we either have to make you a full-time member or we are going to stop our collaboration with you. Mm-hmm. And then you have to now find another place. And yes, this doesn't particularly help people who want to settle down and have a family, because you need that kind of mobility. Right, the minister defends Reeves' tax rate on companies. Well, they're protecting and defending their own. Let's move a bit upwards. Reeves' tax rate will mean no more rate cuts this year, warns economists. I will say one thing, which is good. The interest rates fell from 4.99 to, I think, 4.25 and then 4. I was one of the unlucky ones because I got a mortgage with 4.99 a few weeks before it fell into 4.25. But that's a good thing. But they're saying that they are now a bit skeptical. So they will be very skeptical with respect to considering lowering the interest rates yet again. Right, so you get an idea. There are all sorts of data we can talk about here. Labor's economics is an absolute disaster. Borrowing costs rise after jobs blow. It says here the yield on 10-year UK gilts, a benchmark for the cost of servicing the national debt, climbed 4 basic points to 4.61%, well ahead of rises in Europe and the US. It came as traders reduced bets on the Bank of England cutting interest rates again this year following official data that indicated wage growth remains too high for inflation. Yields on bond markets tend to rise when there are expectations that interest rates will remain higher. So it seems like there isn't particular confidence in the UK economy by investors.
Nor should there be. Why would anything get better? It's only going to get worse.
Right, we have this article here from This Is Money, which is talking about rumors about an inheritance tax.
That's just what people need. Stealing the pennies off of dead people's eyes. That's what they want to hear.
We have a Labour minister today open the door to a controversial inheritance tax rate as Chancellor Rachel Reeves looks to plug a $50 billion spending hole at her next budget. Now, I checked, and they said something like there are some research policy institutes who are talking about a £50 billion hole for the next 5 years that Rachel Reeves needs to fill. So that means that she will have to, most probably, because that's how leftists think. They're going to say we're going to increase taxation as opposed to cut spending.
Yeah, there'll be no reforms to the NHS. There'll be no cutting back on the GIBs to migrants. It'll just be pinching from native Brits until there's nothing left to take.
Right, and I think that they are definitely not going to go for cutting spending. They also say about the NHS that one of the reasons why they want to increase their revenue is because they want to increase funding to the NHS.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, the NHS
back to black holes again.
Is one of those institutions where you have several people saying no, it's completely underfunded. Other people saying that it's completely overfunded. I'll say anecdotally, I have a very good friend who has worked for the NHS, and they say that they are spending incredibly, and they are not particularly economic, and they are buying kits of medical equipment, and they are buying them in packs of 15 or 20. And they may open up one, and they're expensive, and they may open one kit, take a knife out of it, or a scalpel, or a scissor, or something, and then throw all the pack
I can put it into perspective if you want.
Yeah.
So we spend more than the Japanese do per head on healthcare, and the Japanese obviously have almost double our population, and yet you can walk into a doctor's surgery and get a same-day appointment. And everything works over there, and it doesn't work here. It sort of suggests that it's not a matter of money, because, unless the Japanese are miracle workers, there's a comparable situation there. It just suggests that everything's being mismanaged and there's lots of waste, which, hearing from pretty much anyone who works in it, is definitely the case.
And there's no incentive by the NHS or by those who, take management of it to reduce that waste, because it's an institution that is just invulnerable to criticism, right? And is treated as this holy thing that can't really be criticised.
I would abolish it in a heartbeat.
Right, so we have lots of billionaires and millionaires leaving. We have here Norwegian marine tycoon flees to United Arab Emirates, blaming Reeves' tax raid. And he is not the only one. There are many who are leaving because they are considering the UK economy to be less investment worthy than they did before. And definitely before Rachel Reeves' tax raid.
I'm amazed it's taking... Sorry, Stelios, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say ever so quickly that I'm amazed people haven't seen the writing on the wall that this entire economic model just doesn't work. Like, it's so obvious. The economic model of the entirety of the Western world doesn't work, and it's just putting our governments into debt, and we need to change it. It's that obvious. It might work somewhat for the United States, but that's because they've got, the dollar, which is used as a reserve currency for a decent portion of the countries in the world, and therefore they can they can run at a debt deficit. They can keep printing money and get away with it because the costs are spread out to not just the United States but other countries as well. We can't do that, so it makes our economy contract like this.
This reminds me of something Milton Friedman said, I think, about the Soviet Union. It says when the Soviet Union collapsed, people said that it collapsed because of a very stagnant economy and economic centralization. And the lesson they took from it was, therefore, we need more economic centralization. So
you couldn't get more centralized than that. There's no denying it. They had an office full of bureaucrats running stuff, basically.
Yeah. Right, so it looks like Rachel Reeves will opt for increasing taxes and try to tax us into oblivion.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.